flapping my gums. Let's see. Okay, we live. We live in the house. Indeed.
Yeah, yeah.
Like I said, another amazing night, another amazing guest. Gratitude for another day. On this planet, in this wonderful day, day and time we're living in. Don't believe the hype. They try to make you scared, but this is a beautiful time to be alive. Real talk. Um, Polka Dot Rabbit podcast. We are here to uplift humanity overall, and we are also here to help assist the melanated, woolly haired beings that have been asleep for quite some time, help wake them up. You know what I'm saying? Again, uplift humanity because we all got to live in this globe, little globe together. So don't get it twisted. You know what I mean? Um, yeah, if you haven't already, please go to polka.rabbitpodcast.com, pick up my book, Bicultural Living and Leaving the World of Illusion. And of course, always follow, like, and share. And please, we're always trying to build to support the Cash App's there, PDR Corp, PDR Corp for Cash App for support the channel. We definitely appreciate that. Um, that's it for me. I'm gonna go ahead and let my man. Well, let me say this real quick. I was telling Mike I like to get my old heads from the RVA on here. You know what I'm saying? This is one of the cats I've known for a hot minute. You know what I'm saying? And you know, amazing music head. You know what I'm saying? Does a lot of stuff in the community. Um, Amazing individual. You know what I'm saying? And I'm going to go ahead and let you go ahead, and describe, introduce yourself, man. Go ahead.
Yeah, yeah, that's what's up, man. Well, I appreciate you having me on the podcast. I know you like me, man, and people know you by many different names, So I know you as Zozer, I know you as Joe, I know you as all different types of stuff, man. So I appreciate you like I said, inviting me to be on here. I do a lot of different stuff in the community, both as a consultant and as a creator itself and as a organizer also, which is something that I've done for a long time. Our history goes back to live music scene in Richmond back in the 90s. So
Hmm.
when I first moved here, that was definitely one of the scenes that I got into. So I had a pretty diverse background coming up. I'm a middle child. I have a brother who's 4 years older and another brother who's 4 years younger. But I started playing piano when I was five because my older brother, was taking lessons and stuff like that. So didn't really like it, wasn't into it. So played for like a year. But as I went through elementary school, I played cello for a year. I played saxophone for a year. And then this was in Virginia Beach where I grew up. And then in middle school, I started going to a different school, a private school. I had pretty good grades, so tested in here. Didn't pay any money, full scholarship type thing. But I started listening to a lot more different types of music. This was in the kind of late '80s, so I was already very much into rap and hip hop and the development of it. I'd already started buying records, when I was a teenager, and already kind of started DJing the cookouts and things like that. So I had a pretty deep connection to like the emerging hip hop and rap culture. But when I started going to this new school, I got a lot more into like classic rock and things like that. Started hanging out with different kids. Also taught myself how to play guitar. I got really into that. Not already had some experience playing cello and other instruments. So middle school and high school, I started playing guitar. So then I ended up coming to VCU in the early '90s. My roommate, my freshman year, was a bass player from Lynchburg that was really into like punk and hardcore and stuff like that. He was the first person to introduce me like Bad Brains and stuff like that. I knew like some metal stuff like Slayer and Metallica and like some other things like that. When I came to Richmond, that's when I really kind of found out about like punk and like hardcore stuff and like that. So started going to shows with him and like Twisters and the Metro. Also going to shows at Ivory's to see like Brand Nubian and Special Ed and stuff like that. So I've always had a very kind of eclectic kind of background and a set of experiences to go into kind of like my musical background. So in the '90s, started playing a little bit of live music with bands and stuff like that. Was in a couple of different kind of like black rock bands, kind of punk stuff. I think that's definitely where we came across track. Rocking people like Joseph, who we were talking about earlier. I mean, Big Tone, Cheese, just a lot of different. young brothers that were playing music and like playing like heavy music and like playing kind of hard live music. And there was really kind of a scene for that at the time. A lot more venues to be able to do stuff like that in. I got into that the first couple of years when I was in Richmond. And like I said, I was still going to hip hop shows and stuff like that, but I stopped buying records kind of a while ago, probably like when I was in high school. I started buying more like cassette tapes and then CDs as kind of as I started getting a little bit older. But I was watching like videos and I'd always hear like these crazy remixes of like these different songs. It's like in the early 90s, man. So I remember there was the Juicy remix for Biggie, man, and I'd hear these things. I was like, yo, where are these? These aren't on the albums. And then
Mm-hmm.
I realized that a lot of these remixes were on the vinyl. So I was
Mm-hmm.
like, man, I need to start like searching these out because I was kind of wanted to start DJing again. And some people had kind of talked to me about that because they knew I had a pretty wide history of music and stuff like that. So I started buying records again, probably like around like 94 or so, 95, and started making mixtapes because, again, I was getting all these different remixes that weren't on the albums, that weren't on the CD, but sometimes you hear them on the radio on the mix shows and stuff like that. So that's kind of how I reestablished myself as kind of a DJ. From when I was a teenager, when I was in Richmond, that's kind of how it started. And then I started DJing at VCU's radio station, WVCW, around like 96 or 97 or something like that. Um, Moved back to Virginia Beach for a while, then moved back to Richmond in early 2000s and started DJing my first DJ residency was at a spot called Area 51, which was downtown Shockoe Bottom, super, super dope place. Played some great shows there, some great people, Souls of Mischief, Super Friends, Nonfiction, just a lot of hip hop groups, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
b-boy groups too. So that was a pretty cutting edge type spot. So that's really was the first place that I had my first DJ residency in '99. Um, Kind of did some other stuff in Richmond for a while. And then I actually moved to Philly in 2003 to work on some music with some friends of mine on a group called Infectious Organisms that I was a DJ for. And they moved up there and I moved up there and was working in the studio doing some stuff with them. And yeah, it was up there, had a great time, got a lot of love for Philly, still representing always South Philly. Um, but yeah, so I ended up stayed in Philly for a couple of years, and then when we got pregnant with my son in 2007 or in 2006, we moved back to Virginia, and then he was born in 2007. So been back in Richmond since then, building, doing a variety of different things. Um, I was playing in a band for a while called Photosynthesizers. That's kind of like the early 2000s. When you were down in Atlanta, we coordinated some shows for you guys to come up
Mm-hmm.
here, rock some shows with you, and we came down there once too. So
I remember that. That was dope. Y'all were dope, man. I like y'all.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That was I'm usually pretty critical about the bands that I'm in and just the art that I create in general. But that was a really, really good band. It was
Yeah, it
like you had
was.
a lot of seven, at our biggest fully operational point, we were seven people, man, like really, really
Mm-hmm.
making some what I think was some really unique music. One of the greatest tragedies of my creative career is that we never got a lot of those songs recorded properly.
Mm.
And that was yeah, without getting into a long story, but that was had something to do with why I left the band, just difficulty around doing that and some other things that were going on. But yeah, so I got into doing that, doing live music stuff. And then around that same time, I started for the synthesizers. I also started DJing at WRIR, Richmond Independent Radio, 97.3, live in the capital city, and WRIR.org worldwide. So I've been there since then. So I've been there, I guess, probably about 15 years or so now. My show now is on Wednesdays from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. So yeah, play a lot of different stuff. Usually play mostly vinyls. You can see I got the crates back here. I still buy a lot of records and still mostly showcase that on the show. But yeah, so since I've come back, I've been able to be involved with quite a few different types of things. Started doing a lot of work in the nonprofit community, both as a DJ and as a musicologist, and also as a cultural consultant for a variety of different organizations. Created an event called Afro Beta. Can maybe talk about that a little bit later. In 2009, it kind of blends the old and the new, kind of DJing and electronic music, and the digging into the history of Black electronic music, primarily created in the United States, and then South Africa and other parts of the continent, but also blending that with live drumming also. So you got the DJ futuristic tech stuff, but you also got the live drumming of djembes and stuff like that. So it blends the two of them together. So yeah, man, just doing that and working still a lot with you. So yeah, like I said, I could talk a lot about all kinds of stuff, man.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But yeah,
Well, you
it's
know,
yeah, go
one
ahead.
thing I want to talk, you know, because you keep on talking about how, like, I mean, you and I to a certain degree in the same boat. I think about I have a longer stint than you leaving Richmond,
Right.
and like, because you know, I'd come back and forth,
Hmm.
because my folks still up here throughout those years, and I didn't realize until I came back here how much this place has changed. You know, relatively
Yeah.
speaking, of course.
No, it
But
has a lot. Oh,
yeah, yeah, because I'm looking back. Like I'm gonna tell you a small story, and I think you'll get it. And people that are from Richmond will probably get this as well. Like I came down, and I was in Shockoe Bottom. I saw this Indian lady come by. You know, it was a whole bunch, about three or four Indian people. They were all dressed all nice, all beautiful. You know, cultural wear. And I was looking at him, and I was just like, and I went up to the man, because that's how I am. I just be, man. I just be like, I just talk to him.
just roll
I
up.
just said, yeah, I just be like, so, I was like, where y'all going? You know what I'm saying? And they were like, she was like, oh, we got a wedding.
Mhm.
And then after she said that, like, I saw, another 20, 30 people getting out of the car, all Indian, beautiful cultural attire and all that stuff. And I was just saying to myself, like I've been, when a long time I was in Richmond, I never saw that. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? I never saw like that. And, and it the things that I've seen that have just changed in Richmond, I was just like, good gracious, I didn't ever think they changed, but it's like Richmond really, reminds me now of a microscopic baby small, like somewhere in Brooklyn, like Williamsburg, you know what I'm saying? Like
Right.
something like that, you know what I'm
Like
saying?
a small town in a borough, a small
Yeah,
section of
yeah,
a borough
that's what it
somewhere.
is. A small like borough of like of of like New York, man. I'm telling you,
Right.
with the
Southern
art.
borough. Right.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. A Southern borough, yeah, with the art and just all this craft beer and all this stuff that they got its own like little. So it's definitely cool, man. You know what I'm saying? It's way doper than I know. I remember growing up, even though I had great times, but
Right.
I guess maybe since I'm older now, you know what I'm saying, I'm looking at it more from a wider perspective. There's a lot to do in Richmond, and it gives a lot. So
Well,
shout out to RVA.
yeah, yeah, definitely, man. And I have a similar story to that, and it was the same type of awakening, but this was right when I moved back to Richmond in 2007, 2008, and I was walking down Gray Street. As a matter of fact, it was on the very same block that the Twisters is on,
Twisters,
old
yeah.
Twisters back in the day. RIP to that spot, which also became the Nancy Ray Gun, and then
Yeah,
Strange
yeah, yeah,
Matter, and
yeah.
it's a bunch of different stuff
We
over the
rocked that
years.
stage many a time, Twisters.
Yeah, yeah, I know, man. I've
Independent.
been there, yeah, many different formats, DJing, live band, all different types of stuff. Yeah, classic stuff. But man, I was walking down the street and there were two women coming towards me and they walked by me and they were speaking Arabic. And I
Hmm.
was just like, wow. I was like, that is something and looking mad comfortable, not even
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I
not,
think what was even more surprising to some extent is that, again, they were in their traditional, Muslim garb, and I was just like, wow. I was like, but
hmm,
and that makes a lot of sense because VCU expanded. They have a campus in Qatar,
mm,
QATAR, in the Middle East.
Qatar.
So yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. So I think it's actually pronounced Qatar. That's what
Is
they
it?
were. Yeah,
That's
yeah.
what they said.
In the
Man.
World Cup, they were talking about that.
Oh,
Yeah,
they said,
pronouncing
okay,
it. Yeah, pronounce.
Cutter.
Yeah, exactly. That's how it's
All us
actually
ignorant
pronounced.
people wrong,
Well,
right?
no, exactly. We spell things how it looks,
Yeah,
basically.
yeah,
Which isn't wrong. There's nothing wrong about that. But you get into that problem when you have translations from different types of characters, like glyphs and stuff like that.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah, 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 yeah,
when you
yeah.
just have a different alphabet altogether in a lot of
Exactly,
cases,
exactly. And
a lot
in
it
three
becomes very
different
phonetic.
three
Yeah.
different sounds from one language I mean one letter as opposed to in
Yeah.
English. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
well, English is notoriously difficult though because
Yeah,
there are a lot of the same word that means a lot of different
exactly,
things,
exactly.
and it's hard for people to understand a lot of the time.
But
And I mean, obviously, there's subtleties in all languages that
the
make
more the more I learn about languages, the more confusing English actually gets.
it. Yeah, exactly. Basically, that's what a
Hmm.
lot of people say. So,
Yeah.
and actually, that's something. it's always funny. I would hear people, commenting about how, somebody in this country, they speak with an
British
accent or don't
English.
speak good English. I was like, well, first of all, that's like their second or third language.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
you barely know how to speak English. So let's just ease off of them with that. But English is actually a very difficult language
Hmm.
for people to learn.
In American
There's a
English,
lot
like
of
somebody
rules.
just said,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, yeah, the British English to be, yeah, in
Yeah,
American English, that more bastardized language makes it even
right.
more worse, you know.
Well, and then you get into the fact that you got what they call Ebonics or African American vernacular English, but that's a real thing though
It is, yeah,
because
yeah,
of the way that we stylize language and we always have, and that's one of the things that made hip hop so powerful in its immersion as a
exactly.
global kind of phenomenon is that people caught on to the language and the coolness of it and the progressiveness of what Black folks have always done, with culture, with American culture in particular. They've taken kind of what's existed and flipped it into something, new and exciting and cool more than anything. I think that's something that's lost a lot of time and what actually Black folks actually bring to the table in a lot of
Yeah,
ways. And
yeah,
it's kind
yeah.
of well, I didn't say it, but I actually work with an organization called the Africana Film Festival. I've been
Hmm.
their sonic curator for the past 6 years, which involves a couple of different things. I DJ some events for them, but I also coordinate DJs to make mixes that are played in some of the venues where they're doing their film screenings at. So during the Africana weekend, there are like probably about 7 or 8 different venues that where at any given time they might be showing a series of films. So rather than me making mixtapes for it or DJing all of it, I work with other DJs in the community to make like an hour mix that can be played in these venues.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
they can kind of get some shine on there also. Plus, they also get some kind of unique music that's curated just for whatever the event is. But yeah, Africana Film Festival. That's I forgot specifically what part of it, but yeah, that's something that I've worked with for a while and work with them to try and get a variety of different just fields. That's one of many organizations I work with that tries to get
Mhm.
authentic kind of experiences that represent culture in the deepest way, and that's kind of what I've tried to do in a lot of ways and work that into the music and work that into a variety of other different things.
So that's interesting because, like, I know, like, with the times changing and the influence of like hip hop culture, black culture, etc., whatever you want to call it, culture in around the world. But how have you seen that as an influence in Richmond specifically? I like as far as the culture of being more incorporated into more ethnicity, specifically black being incorporated not only just to the the music aspect, but beyond that, you know what I'm saying? Be
Right,
it political, you know what I'm saying? Well,
right.
have you seen an influence there as well?
I have. I think Richmond clearly has a very very deep history in a variety of different ways, and Black
Hmm.
people have a very very deep history to Richmond. All over the country. I think they say like 1 in 3 people can trace their lineage back to coming through Richmond in some capacity. 1 in 3 Black folks in the United States. So Richmond has always had a deep history in that. I think one of the things that um, there has been a resurgence, and I think part of that resurgence is going back and figuring out actually how great and the accomplishments were that a lot of these people achieved in the turn of the century through Jim Crow, through Reconstruction, all these different things. People like John Mitchell, the reporter who started the Daily Planet.
Hmm.
People like Maggie Walker, people
Yeah.
like Bill Bojangles Robinson, people like William Washington Brown, all these different people, and all of those people, actually specifically that are just named right there, were all based out of Jackson Ward alone. You
Hmm.
start thinking about people like Arthur Ashe, who had a
Yeah.
huge influence globally, which a lot of people don't really understand how important Arthur Ashe was on the global scale. Talking
Yeah.
about human rights in a variety of different
Hmm.
ways. A lot of people don't know that there's actually a tennis stadium, major tennis stadium in South Africa that's named after Arthur Ashe.
Yeah, they got him
We
too.
don't even, yeah, exactly. So they were acknowledging the greatness of Arthur Ashe long before the United States was in a lot of different ways. He was known and accepted. I'll say he was known in the United States, but because obviously because of the racial climate, he wasn't acknowledged on the way that he was. But that's been true for so many other
Yeah, yeah.
Black American
Mm-hmm.
musicians, creatives, intellectuals,
Mm-hmm.
athletes. They find much more acceptance across the water than
Elsewhere,
they do
yeah.
here. Yeah.
One of the things actually coming back to Richmond. See, you drive around Richmond, especially about in Chesterfield, and you always see the Powhatan Indians. You see all these different native names, Henrico, Huguenot. You see all these names. You don't really think much about them, But later on, you start doing some research. You know what
Hmm.
I'm saying? And like this was a stronghold for not when I say Native Americans, I mean like Native Americans that look like you and I. I'm not talking about it like
Right.
Indians, you know,
Right.
like a Native. Like I didn't know like how deep that was. Like one of my podcast folks before, he looked like me and you, and he's like a great daggone grandson of Pocahontas.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like
Right.
I didn't know that Virginia, because everybody like to jump on the slave thing first. Oh,
Right.
they came up the slave boats, the all that stuff, but they don't talk
Right.
about prehistory
Right.
or the prehistoric people that lived here, man.
Right. Right.
That's one thing that's really intriguing to me about Virginia. You know what I
Right.
mean? At this point, it's something I never knew in the past, and that's really interesting. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it gets kind of tough to find information on that stuff. But I mean,
Mm-hmm.
if you look at the origins of things like Pocahontas Island and things like that,
Mm-hmm.
where there were these independent Black communities that were existing and were thriving before
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
slave trade became even like a
Yeah,
major thing,
exactly.
it's clear that there were people here of
Mhm.
African people.
Yeah, yeah,
Also,
yeah.
as far as like the navigators of the ships that actually brought them to this part of the land. I mean, there are a
Yeah, yeah.
variety of different stories around that, but
Mhm.
I think one of the most compelling pieces of evidence around that is in Christopher Columbus's own diary that he
Yeah,
kept.
yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah,
been
yeah.
published a couple of different times, but he
Mhm.
refers to the Africans that are there, basically like helping them guide the ship like
Mhm.
through these places, and
He had
yeah,
The Morris brothers with him, man. He had
yeah, yeah,
The Moors,
exactly.
because
Who
The
had
Moors know
already
how to
made
do
the
all that.
trip. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
And they had
yeah.
already made the trip. That knowledge was already known. So
I'm
yeah,
happy.
there's a lot of stuff. So yeah, so to get back to what you're asking about Richmond and this
Mhm.
renewed sense of pride and
Mhm.
being in the city. I think that's where it really started, and then
Mhm.
also understanding the musical history of
Mhm.
people like Plunky Branch, who I've had the opportunity to interview a couple of different times through Africana and through the radio station. Also, truly a global treasure that's right here in the city, and a lot of people don't understand the contributions that he made and his influence globally.
Mhm.
He's again one of those people that they're buying way more of his records in You're Right Now. They're buying way more of his records than anybody, anywhere in the United States, really,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
because
yeah.
they're a lot more tapped in. But
Mhm.
he was doing some pretty revolutionary things with his record label, Strata East Records, that he started with a partnership with a gentleman from Washington D.C. But yeah, Plunky is definitely an international treasure right here from the capital city. So I think as
Mhm.
people learn more about him and people like Lonnie Liston Smith, who is also a very accomplished jazz player, also people like Jerome Bigfoot Bailey, who's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. He was a drummer for
Mhm.
Parliament for many years. Yeah, so he's from right here in the capital city. So there are a lot of people that once you start digging in to the history of the city, there's a lot there to be proud of. There's
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I agree.
a lot of things that have been intentionally done to a lot of communities, both here in the city of Richmond and in communities all across the country, as a national initiative to destroy a lot of these
Yeah,
Black
yeah,
communities like Jackson Ward.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I was just telling somebody that the other day, and they looked kind of glassy eyed to me. I was like, yeah, that was like a national initiative to run federal interstates through successful Black communities, and
Mhm.
disenfranchise
Mhm.
them from their property, take it through eminent domain and leave them with nothing and severely underpay them and displace,
Yeah, yeah.
whole generation of,
Mhm.
or at least half a generation, I would
And
say,
now
of Black folks.
all the kidnapped, hijacked natives are all um in Wickham Court, and you know what I'm saying, and you know
Yeah. Yeah.
they go up in court and like it's just the end result of what you're just talking about, man.
Right.
And
Right.
it is crazy, man, because in that regard, I look at Richmond completely different now.
Right.
Almost every day, the more research, even the stuff you just talking about right now. You know what I'm saying? It's like, yo, there had to be. You know how back in the day they would stamp out things that were like what do you call it, Black Wall Street, like you were saying,
Right.
and all these different places, the spots that were cooking the most, that stamp them out. So later on, you really wouldn't, unless you do your research, you really don't know how dope it really was. You know what I'm
Right.
saying?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So let's talk about not like culture, nonprofits, and how how that all kind of like piggybacking, kind of going forward. We're talking about like, are people like sponsors and people up, are they recognizing this as well, and are they wanting to feed into the cultural aspect now, dealing with African Americans in Richmond?
So there are a couple of different ways to kind of look at it. Richmond
Uh-huh.
is a very interesting place, and like I said, I lived in Philly, spent a lot of time in DC, also spent a lot of time in Detroit. And talking to other people, also, Richmond does have an extremely heavy concentration of nonprofit organizations
Uh-huh.
doing things that really the city should be doing.
Mm.
But there are a variety of different reasons why the city isn't doing that. That's kind of a whole separate podcast on why the city is deficient
Yeah,
as it
yeah.
is, and I don't even know all the answers on that. I have some theories and some talking points on it. But um, when you really look at what's going on in the city and how it affects kind of everybody in some kind of way, I think a lot of the nonprofits want to be helpful, but there's a fundamental disconnect. So I've worked for a variety of different nonprofits. I worked for Art 180 for many years, which is a nonprofit that works with youth in challenging circumstances, mainly within schools themselves. But I was the first program coordinator for a youth facility that they have in Jackson Ward that opened up in 2013. So was there for a while, then left. I was on the board of directors at Patrick Henry School of Science and Arts. I was the vice chair there for a year, and then the chairperson there for a year and a half. So got and Patrick Henry is actually the first charter school in the state of Virginia.
Mm.
So it's both a part of Richmond Public Schools and it's a nonprofit organization,
I
both
never knew
combined
that.
into one. Yeah, yeah. So it's kind of a model school in a lot of ways. So one of the reasons that school came into existence was wanting to create a greater first more options for students within the city of Richmond, but also to create a greater sense of equity, primarily with kids that may have be having a hard time in a normal school environment. Because Patrick Henry uses the outdoors and the Forest Hill Park as a classroom, so the kids spend a lot more time outside. They spend
Mm.
time in the garden. There are a variety of different things that are added into it. But that was one of those things that was done educationally to try and bolster some support for the community in a cultural equity kind of way. Basically trying to help disadvantaged people or people that are in challenging communities kind of find a different pathway that they may be able to be successful in. But overall, what the one of the main problems with these nonprofits is that a lot of the people on the ground level that are actually doing the work aren't the people that are in the power positions at the
Yeah.
nonprofits a lot of the time. So you have
Hmm.
this disconnection where you have the people on the ground doing the work, but then you have the people in the nonprofit administrative structure that know how to get the money and know how to
Hmm.
access it. So you have this constant kind of like a patriarchal kind of child son relationship between the
Hmm.
nonprofits where the artists always have to go through the nonprofit to
Yeah,
try and get
yeah.
some allowance and get some money to do whatever it is that they want to do.
Mm.
Now, with that being said, there has been more of a push towards funding more culturally, dare I say, kind of, racially black, Afrocentric types of projects.
Hmm.
Um, and I would say that was even happening a little bit before COVID and before the uprising in 2020. But that really kind of put it on everybody's radar with George Floyd and everything that happened around that. So
Hmm.
I think what we see now is that there are a lot of well-meaning people um, wanting to do things, in the nonprofit community, but a lot of times the way that they go about it is not the healthiest way. One of the main things I would say also a problem with kind of the overdependence on nonprofit structure is that um, if you have a successful nonprofit, then you got a couple of people on staff making that nonprofit work. So for every, $100,000 that you may get for the nonprofit, 80,000 that may go towards just running the nonprofit itself, and
Hmm.
only 20,000 that actually goes towards
Spread
helping
out.
whatever it's supposed to. Yeah, and that was
Yeah.
one of the things that years ago, and actually I would say with almost any foundation, and I was going to use the Susan Corman Foundation, which does breast cancer awareness. They made a couple of other ones. Russell Wilson from the Seattle Seahawks. There's some criticism of a foundation that he had, and they're like, "Oh well, they only spend 30% of what they're taking in on the actual people or the actual subject of what their nonprofit is." And people were like all up in arms, like they're just like throwing the other 70% out of the window. And I was like, no, they have to pay the people to actually run the
Hmm.
organization. So again, if you think about it in a different way, if say whatever organization Russell Wilson does, if it was here in the city and they get that $100,000 to make that nonprofit run, if you have entities within the city and the city is actually maintaining it properly, that $100,000 in theory goes to the city or goes to that organization to be able to use the full amount of it in some kind of way. Doesn't always exactly specifically work like that, but conceptually, it's if the city is doing it, then it loosens up all this other money that isn't paid out in all these individual organizations payrolls that are trying to do these little micro things around. You actually have people in the city that are on this already on the city payroll, but you have to get them to be able to operate more efficiently and to be able to manage the workload that it's required to make something like that work.
Yeah, you
And
don't
that's
have
something
any
that
say in
Richmond doesn't
any.
have.
You don't have any say in any of that. Yeah, because they already have their structures and they can just they have to do what they have to do under
Right.
that structure. Yeah, and it's separate. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, so well, that's really interesting, man. So our let's talk about music and that combining together. You know what I'm
Sure.
saying? Because I know when I grew up, I remember we had music class.
Hmm.
Even when I went to when I was in school here, middle school, I played the oboe and the baritone, and then I have to pay a cent for any of it.
Right.
I just signed up. They hand me an oboe. I just had to buy my reeds for the oboe and my mouthpiece for the baritone.
Right.
That's it.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And like, you know, how how was there? Let's talk about the maybe the rise, the fall, and then maybe the resurgence, if that is the case here. Is that what's happening or
Of music, you mean?
hey, music in
Music
schools?
education.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I have some interesting thoughts on that and kind of how kind of that whole pathway. So if you go back to the 60s, really if you go back to Sam Cooke
Mm,
as an artist, uh you know he was very revolutionary and started talking about social issues like in a really
mhm,
really real way as a
mhm.
popular artist.
Yeah.
If you think about through the 60s, all the music that was coming out, James Brown, I'm Black and I'm Proud, all of these different groups that were coming out in the 60s that were and this isn't even it really just isn't even in the Black community. I mean, if you think about the 60s, 65 to 75 is my favorite time of music personally, just because
Yeah,
there
me
was so
too.
much
I
wrapped
agree.
into it,
I agree. I agree.
and just everybody was kind of feeling all these emotions over, King being assassinated, MLK, JFK, Vietnam War, just all this different stuff was going on that people that was coming through in the music.
Mhm,
But what I think happened is the music got too powerful for a lot of
mhm. I agree.
entities. So one of the main things that they did is that they started taking the music programs out of the schools,
Mm,
because when in the 50s and 60s there were a lot of brothers just picking up guitars, and they were some of them were learning in school, but that was kind of what they did. That was the musical thing. They didn't have keyboards or a whole bunch of electronic stuff. They were playing guitar, playing drums, doing different things like that, trying to find money to purchase instruments. So as they took these music classes away out of the schools, out of the kind of the African American community, to some people say. Of course, you had the OGs and the older people who knew how to play these instruments, but what you ended up with really is a group of young kids who didn't really have an outlet, and they weren't being taught the instruments and anything like that. So what they did was, rather than having their own instruments, they started going into their parents' record collection and started taking those records and playing
Mm,
those songs instead. They didn't have the instruments to do it, so they started doing it with the
gotcha.
records. And that's how the whole DJ
DJ
culture kind
thing.
of
Yeah, that
emerged.
makes
Yeah,
sense.
exactly, because they weren't necessarily learning how to play instruments, but they knew the music and they loved the music and they had this history of music that they had heard through their parents. So they took all that and they created a literal new art form with that DJ setup. Um,
That that what you're saying is so key, man, because the revolutionary aspect of how music changed, and and how they could affect, especially coming from us, because the whole world's always been looking at us in that, coming from the music, and even on a healing aspect. I remember Bobby Hemmett was one time he was talking about how as you said, like I guess we'll come the powers that be. They found out that we as soul people would heal ourselves through soul music.
hmm,
You know what I'm saying? And
right,
then because we had the carbon vinyl, we get the
right, right,
tunes,
right.
the vibrations,
Yeah,
the
yeah, I
frequencies.
feel it. Yep.
And you be feeling sick, whatever, just depressed, whatever. You put on some, like you said, some James Brown, whatever. Next thing you know,
Hmm.
you up running, and you feeling better. But and then like that time frame you talking about,
Hmm.
you start to get the 80s when everything's sensitized. You know what I'm
Yep.
saying? And
Yep.
digitized. So
Yep.
so that's a very interesting. Just thinking about the way the way you worded that, just the knowledge I have on the timeline of history and the change. But go ahead.
So thinking on that exact trajectory that you're
Hmm.
talking about now, going into the 80s synthesizer, we're gonna jump through, 90s hip hop, where
Yeah.
sampling really came in, and
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
again, you know, as a side note, I've always told people that hip hop is about sampling. It's about
Yeah.
taking things and resynthesizing it. And that's what they were doing with the records. Spinning the breaks. That's what they were doing with the taking little bits and pieces of records and stuff like that. Part of, and a lot of people said this, like hip hop music culture died once they started cracking down on sampling and they
Yeah.
started going in a different direction. So if you think, just wanted to add that note in, you hop over hip hop in the 90s, hip hop in the early 2000s, and you get to where we are now. All right.
Yeah. Yeah.
The
Yeah. Yeah.
popular
Yeah.
music
Yeah.
now is all synthesized, drag and drop,
Yeah.
pretty much, the exact same tones going
Hmm.
through. The lyrical content is no longer healing music. It is
Murder music.
it's murder music, and even in the lightest sense of that,
Yeah.
of course there's like the drill stuff, but you'd be hard pressed to find a rap album, whether it's from Common, Black Thought, or anybody that doesn't have a couple of gun references in it, that doesn't
Hmm.
have a couple of references to blowing somebody away in some capacity, whether people grew up in that environment or not. I realize hip
Hmm.
hop has always been, or often been, a point of reality, and that's what people see. But so we're at a point right now where the music is very, very, very low vibrational, and it is not
Indeed.
healing. It is not
Preach, brother.
healing music at all.
Preach.
Not
Hmm.
at all. And that's good how you pointed that out. The organic vibration, and that also comes back to live music, also live
Yeah.
instruments.
Indeed.
A horn, you feel, saxophone. If somebody's playing that in the room with you, you feel that in your soul. It's not
Hmm.
even just the bass synthesized through the speakers. It's actually an organic feeling that you have. Same thing with live drums. Same thing with all of that stuff. You feel that, in your soul, and it vibrates and resonates with you molecularly. And
Hmm.
that is something that so many of our children and youth and young adults are missing in their
Missing. Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
So part of what I tell people is like, um, a lot of people want to blame the music on a lot of the violence that we're seeing. And I think it does. I think the part of it is that the music has been weaponized, so that now,
Yeah.
even if you take the situation that just happened at this graduation here in the city of Richmond, bless the souls of the people who lost their lives, that comes back around to part of the main part of that beef was that somebody had been killed in the community, a young man, and somebody made a song talking, talking shit basically about
Hmm.
killing this dude. Now it's happened numerous times,
Yeah,
man,
yeah,
where
yeah,
somebody puts it out there and it's just content. It fuels the fire even more. This is something that people putting out there, people listening to, doing whatever, and it fuels the fire for that stuff. So part of what I think, I always say that the music definitely isn't the problem. There are enough problems with guns in all different types of society, all different areas of society, that you can't put it on hip hop specific in any kind of way.
yeah,
You
yeah,
got all
yeah.
kinds of people shooting stuff up. So
Hmm.
it's more of like a gun culture mentality on a base level. But one of the things that I've really been trying to, and I was at a resident artist for R180 this school year, MLK Middle School. I'm really trying to get these young Black kids back into live musical
Yeah.
instruments. First off.
Hmm.
Second of all, well, actually, I would say that second, but first of all, getting them listening to a wider range of
Right, in
music,
music. Yeah, yeah,
and
definitely.
that's part of the problem. Also, is like we heard a lot of crazy stuff coming up. Although I still contend that we didn't hear a lot of stuff that's crazy, like it's seriously like motivationally violent as a lot of the music is now. Yeah, we had NWA and they were talking about shooting people, but it was almost kind of more like a comical way to
Yeah,
some
yeah,
extent.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
this is just a character, the role that we're playing on here. Whereas
yeah.
now it's have you like have like real people like talking about real situations and
Hmm.
really using that as a way to weaponize and to get back at people for
And
doing.
look, and really getting RICO charges too. You
Yeah,
know what I'm
oh
saying?
my god, and that's a whole nother just telling all your
You
business,
know what I'm saying?
like what you're really doing. Like it's like, oh
Yeah,
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 I
yeah,
I shot somebody. Yeah, just and see that's what I'm talking about. And it's just that's the culture. And you just think about, we're just sitting there thinking about it, it's like that's just stupid to do that. Like, why would you go and put out a song where you're talking about the crimes that you're actually
yeah.
committing in some kind of way?
You know,
But that's the culture, and that's part of what the problem is. The music has
yeah.
been weaponized to some extent,
Mhm.
and people get killed over those songs also because people know what people did. So it's all this different stuff, and the music is the vehicle, for primarily for young Black men in a lot of ways that's being given across, but that's not specifically the problem.
Yeah. And Professor Griff, man, did a hell of a job for years dropping this in his books. You know, I'm talking
Mhm.
about hip hop, and he went to a scientific level. You
Right.
know, and to breaking it down, like we talking about the frequencies and everything, and
Mhm.
like I'm still tripping about. Like I heard one of the guys from Bone Stuck and Harmony, and you hear about you might have heard about that the quote unquote meeting that they had in the '90s to
Yeah.
transfer conscious hip hop
Yeah.
to gangster rap.
Yeah. Yeah. I know what you're talking about.
Perfect, yeah, perfect example. And these people that this was real. Like they coming out
Right.
saying, "Yo, these people they realize the conscious hip hop. So you went from Tribe Called Quest to, like you said, Brand Nubian, all these cats that was spitting all this conscious hip hop. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? Elevating minds
Mhm.
to to garbage,
Yeah. Well,
murder music.
yeah, yeah, and it is murder music. And I was just watching probably about a month, not less than a month ago. I was watching this old documentary on Public Enemy, who's like my favorite, but
Yeah,
definitely the
me
most
too.
outside of my parents. Public Enemy is probably the most
Me too.
influential like entity on my life and my being. But Chuck D was talking about that, because they came out with Apocalypse '91,
Yeah.
which wasn't their best album, but it had some good
Hmm.
stuff on it. And
Yeah.
he was talking about how he's like in '92 it just changed, dude. And he was like, you know what
Yeah.
changed it? He was like the Chronic, dude. Dr.
Yeah.
Dre's the Chronic.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That
Yeah. Yeah.
that's what
Yeah.
was the crux
Yeah.
and point that
Yeah.
changed it from being conscious music to being party music.
Yeah. Exactly. No,
And
that's
that
true.
was
That's
yeah,
true.
and
Yeah,
that
that was a
was
badass album too,
yeah,
man.
it was,
Everybody can
man,
hold to
and
it.
that was
Yeah.
the thing, man. It was just so great and so
Yeah.
appealing. But one of the things that's also important to note that I don't know if people really put together, talking about that meeting that happened, and still it's still kind of a bit of lore, but I mean it's pretty clear that
Yeah. People
if
there,
that
they were like, I was
exactly
there.
didn't happen,
Yeah.
it was like
Yeah.
that's kind of what happened in general.
Yeah.
If it
Yeah.
didn't
Yeah. Yeah.
happen
Yeah.
exactly
Yeah.
like that, there was definitely a conscious push. And what people don't realize, the connection a lot of people don't make, is that the same time that that change in hip hop was initiated was the same time that the prison industrial complex started
Exactly.
getting
Exactly right.
privatized,
Yep.
right? So people realized that we can make money off of putting people into the
In
prison
jail. Yep.
industrial complex as private corporations.
Sick
So
bastards,
once that
man.
happened, plus then they started controlling the music industry. I mean, there are a lot of people that have holdings in those
Oh yeah.
companies just through
Yeah. Yeah.
portfolios
Yeah.
and stuff like that. But General Electric is one of them. As like a parent company, was one that
Oh
has a
my
very
God.
high stake in Interscope, and also has a very high stake in the prison industrial
And
complex.
I'm hearing that even at this point now, like I was looking at something online. They're saying that a lot of these young rappers, like the labels, will get out life insurance policies on them. You know what I'm saying?
Wow.
And yeah, life
Yeah.
insurance policy on them. And next thing you know, they dead 6 feet under, and now they getting
Wow.
the money, and let's
Right.
sign the next one, and let's keep
Yeah.
on. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. There's business in it. Like I said, there's a lot of profiteering in rap, and
mhm.
black males in particular, black females too. Feel the brunt of that, and that money goes into the pockets of other people,
Yeah,
not
yeah, yeah, yeah.
that typically don't look like us. Although they're you know depending on who you talk to and depending on what's going on, there are a lot of people that have given up certain things to be able to sit at the table to be able to get a piece of that also,
Yeah,
and then
yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
get into speculative stuff with that,
Yeah.
but yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
clear that.
yeah, Kanye, yeah, he he was
Yeah.
talking about that very vocally, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And see, part of the problem that I have, that I've had kind of with Kanye for a while,
Mhm.
is the fact that he wants to be this big like designer and stuff like that. And this goes back to when he got in that thing with Sway, where he was like, "How
Yeah,
Sway,
yeah,
how
yeah.
Sway?" Where he was telling me, he's like, "No, you got to do it yourself." But Kanye was so focused on trying to get um, these connections so that he could overcharge black folks for stuff the same way that the white folks
Yeah.
charge black folks for stuff. And that's
Yeah.
part of the problem that I had. I was like, yo, so why is everybody like trying to like get black folks to like spend all these exorbitant amounts of money on shit that they really don't need and
No
that they
need,
really don't
yeah.
need to be spending their money on in any kind of way,
Mhm.
And I mean,
Uh,
Kanye's not alone in that regard, but he wanted so hard to
yeah.
be part of
I
that group
I
of
see.
people that could do that shit.
And I'll talk about now because I tell people, and I'm being completely honest, like I didn't know how much filth and debauchery until recently, how much is in just all the we all know sex, drugs, and rock and roll. It's real when it comes, that we know that we've seen that, been there, whatever the case may be. Not but we've seen that how that all works around the music industry.
Right.
But my thing is like I never honestly knew just like this Hollywood thing, and how deep all this stuff gets with these record companies and what they'll do.
Right.
There's money. I never knew how
Yeah.
deep it was,
Yeah.
and it's
The
like
things
now
that
you're
they do
like,
to keep people locked into contracts and keep
yeah, yeah,
people
yeah, yeah,
quiet
yeah,
from
yeah.
saying things about other things that go on.
The street
Um, one
killing
of the
people.
Yeah, yeah. One of the things that they talk about, many people have talked about, is kind of ruining people's careers for speaking out on certain things or doing certain things because you know most of the press, even if these people don't necessarily have control of the press in some way, the way that it works in this country is that you are guilty until you're proven innocent. So
Yeah,
you can just
exactly.
put something out there and you will ruin
Eating
somebody's
it. Yeah.
career, for just putting it out there. And that's been
Hmm.
one of the long-standing things that they have on people. And I've heard, some much more sinister things going on too,
Yeah,
man. As
yeah,
far as
yeah,
like
yeah,
people that I
yeah.
know in the industry, that things they do to keep you locked into
Hmm.
um, dealing with a certain group of people, and you can't walk
Man,
away from it.
I've heard some treacherous stuff, and in the you know you'd be like, oh man, that can't really happen. Not can't really happen. You would second guess it, just because it's so horrible. But at the same
Right.
time, then you realize you're still dealing with straight demons. You're like, oh no, it's
Yeah.
probably that times four or
Yeah.
10. You know what I'm saying? So
Yes. There's actually I didn't put this on the list of talking points that I sent you because this is something I'm just getting into, man. I
hmm
definitely wanted to mention it, but there is a set of kind of like a lawsuit that's being developed right now that's called Disclosure 2. All right. And what this is, it's being led by a gentleman named Dr. Stephen Greer. And what it
that's my
is,
dude.
you know Stephen Greer. So do you know about Disclosure 2, about
Yeah,
that
yeah,
whole
yeah,
thing?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Okay. So yeah, I figured that you might already know. But it's important that's like one of the most important lawsuits that this country has ever seen.
Hmm.
And for
Hmm.
anybody who doesn't know what it is or who may be watching this, basically disclosure two is that there are entities, whistleblowers that have come from inside the federal government,
Mm-hmm.
from numerous contractors that have worked for the federal government,
Mm-hmm.
that talk about not just the existence and presence of UFOs and of aliens and of
Mm-hmm. ETs.
contact with them,
Mm-hmm.
but the fact that private contractors have been taking the technology
Exactly right.
from these private or from these foreign objects and developing
Mm-hmm.
secret technology that they are
Mm-hmm.
now using in a variety of different ways around
Mm-hmm.
the globe and around
Mm-hmm.
the solar system.
Exactly
Right?
right.
Yeah, and it's absolutely fascinating, man. They just did a debriefing on Monday. The thing is a 3 hour thing, man. I watched the whole thing today. I
Yeah.
watched it in a couple of different sections. Absolutely amazing, man.
Yeah.
Some of the witnesses that they have on there. But I think the most important thing for people to understand with this, and I think it's just so crazy, is that a lot for so long people are talking about Air 51 and the government covering up
Mm-hmm.
like all this different stuff.
Yeah.
What Dr. Greer calls the constitutional government, which is like Congress, the
Yeah.
president,
Yeah.
and the
Yeah. Yeah.
Supreme Court,
Yeah.
do not know anything
Anything
about
about it?
any of
Yeah.
this stuff.
It's true.
And that's the problem, and that's what they're
Mm-hmm.
trying to get to. And that's
Mm-hmm.
why it's so exciting, because it's about to be the full scale
It's
of
about
the
to be on and
United States
popping. Yep.
government, yeah,
Yep.
against these black ops
What
organizations
they
and
call it?
contractors that are doing
What they
this stuff.
call it? The shadow government. The
Shadow
shadow
government,
government.
yeah,
They the one
exactly.
that runs everything. But but
Exactly.
the
Yeah.
the other peons and ham and eggers that up front that you go voting for, they don't know nothing.
Yeah,
Because they just
exactly.
you
Or a
know
lot of them know stuff about it and they choose to look the other way. They know that it's going on. Like he was talking about many people walking away, or President Bush telling Bill Clinton that he needed to walk away from investigating this, which he
yeah
ended up
yeah
doing
yeah yeah
to
yeah
some
yeah.
extent. But I bring that up to say that there's a lot going on really kind of in the world that affect a lot of different things, man. And I think
Mm-hmm.
everybody is the way things are so crazy now. People are trying to scramble so much to make ends meet that you miss a lot of things,
Yeah yeah
like
yeah.
that.
And
And I think
distractions and
yeah, yeah,
distractions, all the
exactly.
crazy
And I
stuff.
think that's
Well,
yeah,
no, that's it's two things, man. Since we got you brought that up, two things. One thing is, man, if people are interested, because they always put everything out in front of you, is they have to. That's a part of the way that they kind of escape their karma, so to speak. Um, and they always put it in the cinema. But I'm gonna tell y'all something. All y'all people watching this, watch those most recent and watch the most recent but last X Files
hmm
episodes.
yeah.
Those things, you talking about disclosure. You know what I'm saying? It's you know what I'm
Just
saying?
put it
It's
out there.
because see, if you follow that stuff, then you like,
Uh-huh.
God damn it, they telling you,
Yeah,
they
yeah.
tell
Oh, a lot of
they
that stuff
telling
was
you,
real, bro.
yeah,
Like a lot of it
you
was
like,
real.
yo, they're
Yeah,
telling everything right in the show. Not
right,
only that, but also people peep this and watch out because we're in a subject. Is that they're saying that Mel Gibson is coming like with a 4-part series of talking about like child sex traffickers, human kidnapping, all that kind of stuff. He's
right.
coming out with a 4-part documentary. You know
Wow.
what I'm saying? Yeah,
Right,
man.
right,
So,
right.
all that stuff that we thought or we just starting to learn, man, but hey man, this is like I said in the beginning of this conversation, this is the day and time that you want to be alive, man. This is the day and
Right.
time we seeing it. This is
Yeah.
this is, this is it's on and popping. And if
Yeah.
you are able to be a being and a conscious being and really able to tap into what's happening in the universe, boy, woof,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
gonna be this is the greatest show on earth right now.
It is, man. And it's also interesting, being of a certain age like we are, being
Yes.
Gen Xers, because we've seen, we were adults before Google, before
Hmm.
the internet
Hmm.
kind of hit in a lot of cases, or approaching young adults. So we've seen all of that, with real eyes. Like my son, he was just
Hmm.
born and dropped into it, so he didn't see that progression. But we have really witnessed a pretty major change
Shift.
in,
Yeah.
in things that are going on. And then you talk about all the cosmic things that are going on, and like I
Hmm.
said, this whole disclosure 2 thing, man,
Yeah.
that's really kind of exciting and groundbreaking. Some of
Hmm.
the things that they're talking about, being able to utilize. One of the things that he talked about is that one of the executives, I think he said it was from Raytheon that he's doing. The guy didn't want to come out yet. He's not. Yeah, he's got a lot at stake and doesn't want to do it. But he was talking about the fact that Raytheon has free energy sources.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
develop
yeah.
energy sources from this technology. So, Stephen Greer's is like, yeah, basically there's like free energy available of
Mm-hmm.
like the same variety that Tesla has, but
Tesla, yeah,
these small off the grid black ops kind of organizations are holding on to that stuff.
yeah,
So
yeah,
so
yeah.
yeah, a lot of it, it's stuff that I'd heard before and stuff that most people have heard and seen, but now they're like unloading all of that
All of
stuff
it, yeah,
because they realize that it's a matter of national security. And like I said,
yeah,
it's not like the
yeah,
government was covering it up. The government
yeah,
didn't know. So now as
yeah.
they're finding out,
Exactly.
they're like, oh, all this stuff has been going on all this
And
time. We need to have more witnesses come forward and say, like, if you were working
yeah.
on this project as a contractor or something like
Mhm.
that. So it's just, yeah, it's a pretty
And plus
amazing
it's
time.
spilling over. And plus it's spilling over because of I just saw something recently and they're like showing a craft like on like all these wild witnesses crash
Mhm.
and now they saying now after that they're trying to say they have video footage of the daggone extraterrestrials come out of the craft.
Right,
You know what I mean? Like this real time because that's why like you have stuff like TikTok and all these people like that you can take live footage of stuff that's happening right now. It can't be all docs. You can't, you know, you can't fake the moon landing all like you did now, like you did back then. You know what I'm saying? You can't just
right,
make
right.
up, you know,
That's funny.
you just can't
Right.
make up. It's
And it's actually, yo,
people don't think Mr. Ed the talking horse can talk. You know what I'm saying?
so check this out, man. I've always been a skeptic of us landing on the moon. As a lot of people, I had this
Hmm.
discussion with my son a couple days ago. My
Hmm.
brother, when I was out in Cali a couple months ago, it came up, and I was like, "So, do you think we actually landed on the moon?" He's like, "I'm not totally sure about that." Yo, but with this disclosure stuff
Hmm.
and them talking about how they've had all of these technologies since like the 50s,
Hmm.
I'm wondering if somehow maybe that technology actually made its way into like mainstream like defense contracting in some kind of way
Hmm.
and got people to the moon. And one of the reasons, because like one of my main reasons for believing that it didn't happen is like, all right, so nobody's done that since then. Like nobody's
Yeah.
been able to get to the moon. We just happen to be able to do it. And all these
Hmm.
computers and all this crap we got now, we can't get there. Haven't been able to get there in the past. Nobody's been able to get there. So I'm just like, ah. And I still tend to lean by that. But what if they actually use some of this alien
Hmm.
technology that they had in some kind of way and put that into it, and that's actually what they use to get to the moon? I still don't
Yeah,
think some of
I'm
those
yeah,
are
yeah, yeah. And on the Gaia channel, first off, before I even go there, I'm very happy for Steve Greer because he's been doing this for a very long time and he's
there.
finally getting this. But I'm just had to say that. But in the
Yeah,
Gaia channel, they go into detail. There's a couple of cats that talk about advanced technology and the way it's been utilized in space travel and stuff. And they go,
right.
whistleblowers, and it's
Mhm.
real interesting to hear them talk about that. Just going along with what you're saying, but also I've seen other things in which like some of these people that say they're up there, they said that they I think I can't remember who which was. One of them astronauts that supposedly went up there was saying when they got up there, I think this is after the fact, of course, before the first one, but they said that there was beings up there looking at them when they were up there, and they're like on the thing, like he's like, well, yeah, these crafts,
Hmm.
these things, yeah, yeah. So it's
Right.
interesting, man. But when the more and more you just start to learn about this disclosure aspect, it starts to make things more realistic about time travel and also just extraterrestrials being here. Because they say Valiant Thor,
Mhm. Right.
the guy that went up to DC, they said he was from Venus. They
Right.
said Tesla. Some of people said that Tesla was an ET. You know what I'm
Right.
saying?
Interesting.
And so on and so on. So like now all this stuff that we might thought was on movies, it's like the
Mhm.
movies were telling you the truth the whole time about what I'm saying
Yeah.
about how things really went here, man.
Right.
It's a
Right. Right.
crazy day in time, man.
Yeah, one of the witnesses that was in there, he was talking about how I don't know if you saw the movie Interstellar. It was a Christopher
Yeah,
Nolan movie. Yeah, great
yeah.
movie. He was talking about how some of
yeah,
the experiences that he had were like similar to some of the things that he had
yeah,
seen
yeah,
in
yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
when Matthew McConaughey was falling
Matthew
through the black
McConaughey.
hole,
Yeah,
and there's
yeah,
kind
yeah,
of some of
yeah,
the lights and the things like that. He said that that was kind of his experience with it to some
yeah,
extent too.
yeah, 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 yeah.
But yeah, man, I think there's we're at an interesting time right now, man.
Yeah, I
I
agree.
think it's exciting, but I think we're also kind of at a cusp also, and I've kind of talked to you this about before, kind of to dial back into the to the music a little bit of what we were
Mm-hmm.
talking about
Mm-hmm.
with the youth is that I really feel that it's a good time to bring live music back to
Mm-hmm.
live vibrations, really, and this kind of resonates with the same thing with the disclosure too, but because they talk a lot about vibrations and
Yeah,
frequencies and things
yeah,
like
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
live instruments have a certain vibration, see a certain frequency to them.
Mm-hmm.
And the program that I was doing at my resident as a resident artist this year, I introduced kids to a lot of different instruments, got them to kind of play on the piano, got to play guitars. We did some different stuff like congas and stuff like that, and teaching them rhythms, but also teaching them how to be able to play music together as a group. I think that's one of the things also that our community has suffered from when it comes down to rap becoming so prominent. Rap is a very, very
Mm-hmm.
individualistic
Yeah.
engagement, and it's
Mm-hmm.
one person, definitely one person at a time, most of the time saying anything. Whereas with a band, you have multiple people working together to create a certain product, and
Mm-hmm.
it pushes you more towards working together as a team. It also increases accountability,
Yeah.
and then kind of the same way that being on a sports team does, because
Yeah. Yeah.
if you
Yeah.
keep
Yeah.
missing your assignment and keep doing something, your people are gonna look at you and be like, "Yo, bro,
Yo,
you
you
need to
nutting
get
up.
together." Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Thing is, you keep hitting the wrong note on the bass.
Get
People
your
are
ass off
looking
the
like, "Yeah,
field. Bring him
yeah,
in.
yeah, exactly." You need more practice, bro. And there's not a whole lot that you can do to be like,
Yeah.
"Oh yeah, well this happened, this happened." They're like, "No, you actually need to get your shit together."
Get the hell on.
So, yeah, exactly. So I think that bringing in music, live performance. And part of it also, part of the problem now, you were talking about how when you were young, you got to play the oboe, all you need to do is read. I did my music. I actually one day a week went to like a gifted and talented school, like in my elementary years. So that's kind of where I got a lot of that from, although my regular school did have music stuff too. Um, but I think it's important to be able to get it to these kids in a way where everyone gets exposed to it, So
Mm-hmm.
part of the problem now, and I saw this at MLK, they have music programs there. But first of all, it's an elective. So you can either take music or you can take visual art or
Mm-hmm.
you can take like one or two other things.
Mm-hmm.
But also a lot of these kids aren't gravitating towards that because they don't have any interest in it. They don't know
Yeah.
that they should have an interest in it.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to have some type of an environment where it's almost like immersive. Like this is what like the classroom or the lessons are built around is around music or having music playing in the classroom and be like, hey, let's talk about this artist.
Mm-hmm.
I used to have kids would come into my program. It was middle school kids, mostly sixth graders. But I have Kamasi Washington, with like a 12-piece jazz band like playing up on the screen on YouTube, man. And I see some of the kids and they just be like kind of captivated by just like
Mm-hmm.
watching them, just all these people like playing together, creating this wall of sound. And a lot of kids aren't really getting exposed to that. When we were young, we had, elders, grandparents, other people playing. We had our hip hop and our rap and stuff, but they were playing soul music. They were playing
Mm-hmm.
blues in a lot of cases. They were
Mm-hmm.
playing jazz. So we got all of that too. A
Yeah.
lot of these kids aren't getting that also, man. They're just getting the rap stuff. They're just maybe getting some
Yeah.
R&B in there, maybe occasionally some other stuff. Some of the kids did know some other things, but
Mm-hmm.
um, a lot of times you have to learn how to listen to different types of music, and you have to be
Mm-hmm.
exposed to it in a positive and receptive way.
Yeah, man. And it's funny because like I didn't realize until later on, like listen to bands like Fishbone,
Hmm.
and you can be able to listen to a band like them, and you hear on a high level so many different styles of music
Yeah,
played, um, on the highest level, and you really like you're saying like, wait a minute, that they're playing ska.
yeah,
Wait a minute, they're playing funk.
hmm
And wait a minute, they're playing rock. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
And just being able to well, for me personally, just being able to differentiate. the music styles, you know what I'm saying,
Right.
and being, you know what I'm saying, and being like,
Yep.
yo, and dissecting the music styles, even dissecting the music. It's just you can't go wrong with live music. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? And
Right.
I mean, just there's
Well,
no
but the thing is, people have to be trained to like it though, and to understand it. Because I'll give you a perfect example. I went about a month ago. There was a band from Burkina Faso, from Central Western Africa, came
hmm
here. It was on tour in the United States, called Baba Commandant and the Mandingo Band. All right, straight African Afro Manding meets Afrobeat. It's like straight from the continent, man. And I've seen this happen numerous times before, man. So they come through Richmond. A lot of this has to do with who's promoting and how's
of
promoting, man.
course.
But there were a handful of black folks there, like enough to count on
Yeah, yeah,
one
yeah.
hand, dude. Sea of white folks totally
hmm
into this African music, like
hmm
authentic African music,
hmm
like straight from there. And I know that even if there were a lot of black folks in there, they wouldn't understand that, or they wouldn't necessarily be able to feel it, because they haven't been conditioned to be able to feel it in some
Yeah,
kind of ways.
yeah,
You know, the
yeah,
same
yeah,
thing with
yeah,
Jimi
yeah,
Hendrix, and
yeah.
Wesley Snipes said that a white man can't jump. He's like, yeah, you can't hear Jimmy. He's like, you hear him, but you can't hear
You
Jimmy,
can't.
because
Yeah,
you have
yeah.
to be able to hear him on a certain wavelength. Same thing with
hmm
like Bad Brains and things like that. If you're not
hmm
on a certain wavelength, then it's not gonna make a lot of
It's not
sense.
gonna make sense. Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
So
yeah,
that's
yeah.
kind of where I think a lot of the music has regressed to, and a lot of the youth are paying the cost for that. So
Definitely.
one of the things that I would say also, kind of as a case study to some extent, like with the situation that just happened with the young brother being killed because of something was put in the music. What if
hmm
they had other forms of music to be able to
hmm
address that
Yeah.
pain, to be able to address the
hmm
trauma, to be able to
hmm
sit at a piano and to be able to write,
Exactly.
something really, really
I agree.
powerful that comes across in some kind of way. And that is a much healthier way to be able to deal with the trauma that you have musically, creatively, than just getting on there, just like, saying a whole bunch of crazy stuff,
Yeah.
and not doing it in a very artistically creative way. And a lot of the times, just kind of talking shit
I,
more than any for the sake of it.
I would like to be a fly in the wall to those bastards that designed all this stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like in a
Yeah.
room. You know what I mean? In a room,
Well,
and the
yeah, and they
talk that
start.
they have. You know what I'm saying? And just listen.
Yeah,
Make this all low vibration. Them. Let them kill
yeah,
each other. You know.
yeah,
You know what I'm saying? Like
yeah.
because that's how it really was. It
Yeah,
really
well, I
is.
mean, and you look at somebody. I don't know if you know who Jerry Heller is, but he was the
Mm-hmm.
first manager for NWA, first for Easy
Mm-hmm.
E, and then
Mm-hmm.
put together like NWA and kind of got them all locked into contracts and stuff like that. But that was really kind of like the first kind of mass marketing of Black Death to some extent,
Like that.
where they were
Damn.
just going around talking about smoking people. And yeah, there were groups that had talked about it. I'm sure before that, a lot of people considered, Schoolie D as the first like gangster rapper, rapping about
Mm-hmm.
PSK, which is his crew. But NWA was really kind of a turning point in a lot of
Yeah.
different ways.
And
Another thing
placed in
that,
front of everybody.
well, and that's what I was about to say. The
Yeah.
interesting thing about NWA, and this is true about a lot of gangster rap now, is that it really attracted white people
Oh
to
yeah. Oh yeah.
rap.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
they loved
They loved it.
hearing that shit. These ghetto war stories, basically, of black folks, shooting each other. It was fucking entertainment to them. While we really
They
living
got a
that
war
shit,
story. Yeah.
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 While we
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
living it, or living with the
Mm-hmm.
fallout of it on
Mm-hmm.
the other side of it, and that's what a lot of artists say now. A lot of rappers say now. He's like, after I think Jadakiss said, he's like, after 150,000, it's all white folks, man. Like, so
Yeah.
like you can,
Yeah.
anything over 150, and like you done tapped in and you done crossed over to like, a whole different audience stuff,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
so I think that's part of what has been tapped into, is kind of that theatrical nature of rap and hip hop. And one of the things I say all the time also, man, is that rap right now is where rock music was in the 80s, right?
Yeah.
So you got all these like glam bands that are all like made up and got all this crazy stuff going on that ain't got nothing to do with any of the music. Big hair, tights, all these different looks and things like that. And they're caricatures basically of what rock music used to be at one point in
Mm,
time, you know. But it was the dying in of rock music, and the only thing that, or the I won't say the only thing, but the main thing that reignited rock music was Nirvana, dude. And that
yeah.
when Nirvana dropped, that reignited a
Yep.
whole interest
Yep.
into like heavy guitar driven music
Mhm.
because it's just
Mhm.
been dragged down. And if you think about it, you know, I mean, Nevermind was super, super well produced, but
Oh yeah,
you
yeah,
know, even
definitely.
like Bleach, like the album before that, that shit was really rough, man. It was really grimy, and that sound and that kind of aesthetic
Mhm.
came at the
The
grunge
grunge.
aesthetic. Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
came back in a really, really strong way and crossed over to a lot of different people into the rap, into the hip hop community. You know, you
Yeah.
started having, you know, the Anthrax and Public Enemy
Public Enemy.
collabos
Yeah.
and all this different stuff. But you know, so the way I see it, if you think about what happened with rock, there was, you know, Nirvana that came through and kind of revolutionized stuff. It's like,
Mhm.
what is going to be the revolutionary thing that pulls rap
Yeah.
music out of, you know, the hole that it's in right now. I don't know what that'll be, but one other thing, one other big factor that will affect that, that's kind of unfortunate for rap and hip hop, is that rap and hip hop still makes a lot of fucking money, man.
Oh yeah.
Rocket
Tons of.
Rocket stopped really kind of making money, like rap had taken over and hip hop
Yeah.
had
Yeah.
taken
Yeah.
over,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
point,
Yeah.
as well
Yeah.
as like kind of boogie and soul, but rap is
You,
still moving a lot of units.
you know this. It one thing I've noticed. Um, just the expansion of hip hop and just the culture. But that expansion of hip hop and culture also, I think, from what I'm seeing, amongst other things as well. But it's like with the younger generation, it's like a lot of these younger cats don't sweat a lot of the this racial stuff that we saw and dealt with back in the day. You know
Right.
what I'm saying? This hip hop kind of goes
I
in. It's
agree.
like I'm telling you, man. I drove down, I drove down the street in the West End in driving down the street and I'm hearing this bass that bumping. I mean, of course we've seen this all the time I've described, but I just thought it was interesting. And I hear this bass thumping, and some murder music was playing, some bass. I never heard. I just called murder music. I ain't hear, it was something current and just sounded, like I called it the crazy music. But so I'm hearing this bumping. I'm expecting, to hear a certain type of person that's looking at it, and it was like the corniest looking white dude you ever seen in your life sitting there listening to this music.
They
He
love it,
ain't
man.
even look. He wasn't even nodding his head or nothing. He was
Yeah.
like, oh, let's see, I got to take a left here and get, I'm just like,
Just a
you
John
know,
Boomer.
yeah, you know what I'm saying. And but see, I see that, and as having younger kids, and you see that the way that this generation doesn't have as much hangups. I
Right.
don't think as we were forced to have. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, and I think that that happens from generation to generation because I
Yeah,
think our parents would definitely say the exact same thing. You know,
yeah, yeah,
particularly
yeah,
when NW came out and they were talking about smoking niggas all the time, and parents would be like, "Yo, what the? Why are you
yeah,
listening to music where black men are talking about smoking niggas?" You
yeah,
know.
yeah,
So I think that's an important thing to keep in mind because yeah, I've seen and heard some stuff from my son. I'm just like, why is that like funny? Is that really what's popping in the streets right now? And he's like, yeah. He's like,
yeah,
well, yeah, y'all don't understand because you know you get a lot more hung up on stuff, you know.
yeah, yeah,
And even
yeah,
if you
yeah,
think about it with Dave Chappelle, man, and Dave Chappelle really kind of knocked down a lot of bridges, you know, with his
yeah, yeah, yeah,
the
yeah,
Clayton
yeah, yeah.
Bigsby thing, man, you know, and
Hmm.
just kind of
Yeah,
taking
exactly.
on these characters and really kind of stepping his foot like big time into like kind of the racial dialogue and making it
Hmm.
um I would say kind of taking some of the edge away from it to some extent. But, you know, and that's one of the things that I debate with, you know, is like, you know, back in the day, you know, white boy call you a nigga, you know, they getting punched in the face 9 times out of 10.
Hmm. Hmm.
But, you know, is it so wrong if a white boy calls a brother a nigga and only 2 times out of 10 they get punched in the face now because the brother
Hmm.
doesn't care that much? You know,
Yeah,
is
yeah,
that a
yeah,
bad
yeah,
thing or is that a good
yeah,
thing? You know,
yeah. No,
so
I understand what you're saying.
to
Yeah,
not
yeah.
be constantly be pulled by those racial triggers that have got us, you know, thrown in jail sometimes for beating
Yeah.
somebody's ass
Yeah,
just for
yeah,
getting
no,
something
no,
like
no.
that,
That's what I'm
So,
saying.
but
That's what I'm
not
saying.
having that visceral response
Yeah,
that we
yeah.
have always had, when that thing happens. And I mean, that's kind of exciting. Maybe even not even somebody calling you a nigga, but
Hmm.
somebody using the term
Hmm.
nigga just like in their casual
Yeah,
talk or
yeah. I
something like
agree. I
that,
agree.
So is it good to not be triggered by these things that
Yeah, yeah.
that traditionally we've been ready to fight over, or do these different things, or have a certain you know lack of or self consciousness or self awareness because somebody's saying something to her, and they'll be like, I don't care if you call me a nigga. What the fuck? That ain't got nothing to do with anything,
You,
So I don't know.
it's interesting because, like you said, you've been around, you traveled, we have enough experience underneath our belt, and you know, to me, racism is such a funny thing because it's concentrated here in the states. You know
Mm.
what I'm
Yeah,
saying? It's
very much
concentrated
so.
like people don't understand like it's concentrated to like the ninth degree because
Right.
people don't be a lot of other places because once you get out of the United States, you got to realize people if you haven't been out, unfortunately only 10% of Americans have passports, so that says a lot. But
Right.
you go to like I was just in Panama a little while ago. Um, you know, everybody is brown.
Right.
You know what I'm
Right.
saying?
They
You
define
get
themselves by their culture, not by
yeah,
their
yeah, yeah.
race.
You know what I'm saying? There was a what was it? Encanto, I think it was a Disney movie. Encanto, I think it was,
Hmm.
and the family there, they had like all shades
Hmm.
of people there,
Right.
from the light skin
Right.
down to the jet black, native African or whatever the case, you know what I'm saying? But
Right.
they all live in the house with family and they're all, you know what I'm saying? And
Right.
a lot of people outside will be like, yo, we don't do that. You know what I'm saying? And I think in a small sense, because of time and the way things have happened, I think that's kind of what's happening with even race in America. You know
Right.
what I mean? I think
Yeah.
a lot of
Very
those
much so.
old mindsets are dying off. You know what I'm
Man,
saying?
you can see that in TV commercials very,
Yeah,
very clearly,
man,
man.
shit,
Yeah,
man.
like it's all, interracial couples, and
Yeah.
which is good. It's a reflection of society, but it also, one of the other kind of marketing tactics around that is that you appeal, not even necessarily that you're endorsing, whatever type of relationship, but
Mhm.
you're appealing to more people. So you got a white person there, you got a black person
Yeah, yeah,
there,
yeah.
you
Oh,
got,
yeah, yeah. And the
so
Asian, yeah,
everybody kind of
yeah,
feels
yeah,
like they got
yeah.
somebody, some
Hey,
sort of
that's me.
representation in there. Yeah, exactly. So they can relate to something
Yeah, they
somewhere
select.
in there.
They ain't
But
stupid. They ain't stupid. They ain't stupid.
yeah, like you said, that definitely used to not be something that you
No,
would see at
nah,
all.
man.
So
No,
it's
not at all. I see. I look at these TV shows now, and I be telling I'm telling people all the time, we didn't have no Black Panther.
yeah,
You know what I'm saying? The
not at
closest
all,
we
man.
had is the Brown Hornet. You
Yeah,
know what I'm
exactly.
saying? We didn't have, we had the closest most recently before the Black Panther was Wesley Snipes, but
Right,
or we had Bill Cosby. You know what I'm saying?
right.
Our sports heroes, but we didn't. It wasn't like this. Y'all understand? Like it wasn't. I remember. Like I talked about my book. I remember looking in the mirror, just being like, any image that I saw was, that was presented to me, especially because I was in suburbia. It wasn't an image of me. It was an image of something that looked different to me.
Right.
I had to look up the image. You know what I'm saying? So it's not like that now, and
Right.
it's just different, man. But at the same time, man, racism is just another ism. I remember Dr. York said. I remember he says, nobody wins the race in racism, and it's so true. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? It's so true.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And also, it's just a obvious divide and conquer tactic. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? I don't be, I don't, I
Well,
can't. Hmm.
no, I was gonna say I think it's interesting now because what you definitely get a lot more of is a lot of younger white people with a high level of guilt because
Oh
of
yeah,
their
yeah, yeah, yeah,
whiteness,
yeah. I've seen that
so
tons of it.
because and I think again that's one of those things that's changing with the times to some extent, is people realizing the privileged net that they're kind of raised
Yeah,
around in, and not necessarily thinking this privilege is having a lot of money or all this different stuff, but the privilege to be able to move day to day unimpeded
Yeah,
handling your business without somebody having to stop you or wanting to stop you or wanting to harass you in
for no
any
reason.
different type of way. Exactly.
Hmm.
That level of privilege, I think a lot more people
Hmm.
are, younger people in particular, are a lot more aware of.
And
And I try and, and I try and acknowledge that, because I think that's a bold step, and I think we as older black folks and more jaded folks, I mean, yeah, well, whatever, you're still probably the
yeah.
same old racist person as your daddy, which
Hmm.
they might be, but
Hmm.
but even that awareness, and how they, and a lot of times wanting to do stuff differently. A lot of times people don't want to do something differently, but also raising their children to be of
Yeah,
a certain
definitely.
way too, and wanting their children to be around black kids so that
Hmm.
their children are more
Hmm.
comfortable and are brought up in a
Yeah.
different way than they were. So there's
It's
a lot of room for progress.
Yeah, you nailed it because it is the generational thing. Because like I remember, I remember I was in Atlanta, and if anybody knows Atlanta, where Gresham Park is, in I think that's still in Decatur. I think Gresham Park's still in Decatur. But anyway, it's Gresham Park is like on the kind of like the it's near the airport, you know. And Gresham Park, I remember there was this white kid, white parents, but they were, of course, they were from Jersey, they were from up top, but they moved to Atlanta. But they were living somewhere in they were living a good at least 20 minutes, 30, probably 30 plus minutes away. But they specifically brought their child to there because
Yeah.
they knew he had a better opportunity of becoming a better football player. You know what
Hmm.
I'm saying? Than somewhere else. They didn't.
Right.
They weren't. And one of them was like a lady was like a school teacher. You know what I'm saying? They
Right.
both from up top. I think they were from Jersey,
Right.
and they weren't studying anything. They were out there with the fellas smoking blunts. You know what I'm saying? You know what
Right.
I'm saying?
Right.
They
Right.
were cool. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And they were a part of that our age generation. That more than likely, they probably grew up with
On hip
people.
hop. Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Not a hip hop, but just had friends that were black or whatever.
Right.
Maybe even dated them, whatever the case may be. So
Right.
I think that's like what we're seeing now is like kind of the end result of all that trickle down effect of you know what I mean, of just of just that progression of you know American culture kind of really coming together. And
Right.
it's interesting on the flip side because you see this guy DeSantos down in Florida, and he's talking about all this woke stuff, and how they're going to take all the history out of the schools and stuff. And it's like the exact opposite we're talking about as far as like not being guilty. You know what I mean? It's like we
Right.
not the white guilt, but it's just like nah, we don't even care about none of that. You know what
Yes, the denial still
I'm saying?
kind of
Denial.
the
Yeah, yeah,
existence
yeah,
of it.
yeah,
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 exactly.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
that's
yeah,
what
yeah,
that his generation represents. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah,
he's a little bit ahead of us, I'm sure, but that's, a lot of people joke that, you gotta just wait for him to die off, basically, and
yeah, yeah.
eventually all those people, and you'll have kind of a new dawn of people that are at least somewhat more engaged. I would definitely say definitely more engaged than their parents are,
Well,
at this
like
point.
you were saying earlier, because cosmically and just dealing with the day and time we're in, because I know I'm gonna tell you something. I had some folks, white folks I've known for years that it's like just like on the some brothers and sisters I know that the switch flipped and they became conscious. It's the same thing with these individuals.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So it's
Yeah.
not even a race thing. It's just it's weight race is like the bottom, like we talk about low vibrational. That's the
Right.
that the way they see that. That's you know, it's more so a cosmic
Right.
change and shift of
Right.
all humanity and whoever can embrace it is coming along for the ride. You know what I mean?
Right. Yep. 100%, man. Yeah, I
Hmm.
definitely feel you on that.
Yeah, man. So yeah, man. So man, well, go ahead, man, and tell the folks, what you got going on, you know what I'm saying, what you are, or how they can contact you, you know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? And
yeah, definitely,
yeah,
man. Yeah, well, first of all, I got the Afro Beta shirt on. I think I mentioned that before, that I started this event in 2009. That really wanted to, after I moved back from Philly. I seen some things there, and came back here. And I've been a DJ for a while, but I really wanted to do something a little bit different, a little bit more culturally robust, so to
yeah,
speak.
yeah, yeah.
I put together this event. I invited some of my friends that were drummers to come out, man. So spent a lot of house music and techno, basically Afro house stuff a lot. We have live drummers that come out. Anybody can bring a drum out there and get in with it. We got our next one coming up this coming Saturday at Black Iris, as a matter of fact.
Okay.
We
Yeah.
got $5 advance tickets you can find through. I got a link tree on my Kemetic page, and then Afro Beta AFROOOBETAAA, three O's and three A's. So yeah, I've been doing that for a while, man, and that's been a really successful kind of deep cultural event that is, it's positively affected a lot of people, man. I've gotten a lot of stories over the years of
Yeah.
the positive effects of just that experience, of, like I said, of having the live drums, the live vibration there from the drums, but also having the club kind of dance music kind of rave type environment with it also.
I
So yeah,
I
that's
thought it
something
was
that
a
I'm
I thought it
excited
was
about.
a very interesting, unique concept as soon as I heard about it.
Yeah,
Very
yeah,
much
yeah,
so.
definitely. It's I'm not I've seen definitely seen people with live drummers before, but I don't know. I've never specifically heard of an event like a regular event where it's like the DJ and the live drummers that come out
Mhm.
and where it's open where anybody can bring a drum.
Mhm.
A lot of
Yeah.
times we
Yeah.
bring extra drums out there so people can jump in also just to kind of get a feel for it. I really wanted it to be a participatory event,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
really trying to do things a little bit differently than how I've seen them done before.
Mhm.
And then about to start another. So school year ended, so I ended my residency at MLK Middle School, but about to start a music program at the Boys and Girls Club out in the East End. They got a new facility out there, so gonna be working to try and get some instruments into the space that we have there. They got a lot of different room to do different stuff, and like I said, get these kids experimenting with music again, kind of hearing different stuff, hearing different types of music, and really kind of stimulating them in a way where they can have some other different outlets to be able to not only just express themselves, but also be able to channel their emotions through, So, you used to have blues music. You could listen to it when you were sad, and it'll kind of take you somewhere and somebody who you can relate with in some kind of way.
Mhm.
Don't nobody sing about real love anymore,
Mhm.
which is kind of
Murder
crazy.
love.
Man, I don't even know if that. I don't know what it is, but love or something. But and it's
Sugar
really
love.
sad, man. You really think about how deficient it is for these
Mhm.
kids a lot of the time, and how they're not getting what they need in a lot of ways, culturally and spiritually. So that's the medium that I work in. Typically, is music. So yeah, just working to do that, to spread the vibes, to adults around the way through Afro Beta and through different events, through sonic curation for the Africana Film Festival, and then hit the youth with the programming also, man, and hopefully make a quality investment into having youth come out a little bit better on the other end of things.
Well, as you already know, man, I got your back on that, man. Hopefully we're
Yeah, yeah.
together in the future. We're gonna make some things happen, man. But well, shoot, man, this, we're gonna have to have part two, man.
Yeah, yeah, of course, man. Yeah, yeah. It's a lot of stuff we didn't cover, and
Yeah,
like
man.
I said, we've talked about this music thing already a couple of times with the youth, and this
Hmm.
program that I was just talking about that I'm starting next week. This just came up probably about within the past 2 weeks or so.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I've
yeah,
definitely been thinking about talking to you and connecting with you on that, and seeing if we can get some people to make some donations of some instruments and stuff like that.
yeah,
Like we have a
yeah,
space
yeah,
to keep
yeah.
it at. They're excited about putting some stuff in there. So yeah, we can definitely build on that and help try and make a positive impact
Yeah,
with
yeah, 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 definitely. Yeah, man, I ain't gonna front, man. I'll tell you straight. I'm jonesing, man. I haven't been on that mic and I hadn't been on that mic in a minute, man. I'm about
it.
my right. See this hand shaking? You know what I'm
You're
saying? God
fiending.
dang. Yeah, man.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
about
I feel
time.
you,
It's
man.
about time to get
Yeah,
the word, get the message out, man. So,
yeah, 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 I feel you, man. So
I'm
we're
just trying to
definitely
figure
link
it
up,
out.
do some
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah. I'm
Yeah,
just
yeah.
trying to figure out the proper way to do it. So I'm working on
Yeah,
that
yeah.
now. But
Yeah, things have changed a lot, man. Music industry has changed. The way people listen to music, the way people consume music is very different, man. So I think there is currently, and there's going to be more of a reliance or more of a resurgence of going to live shows. And we talked about this before also
mhm,
about bringing the youth back to live music again. I think
mhm,
it is about that time for that to happen.
I agree.
And yeah, I think that we can be at the forefront of making that happen.
Man, you remember how? I mean, I just remember. I mean, because when we were linked up, even in the early '90s, and Richmond music scene was off the chain. Hip hop. You
Yeah.
know, I used to go. You can go down to what's that spot down in Petersburg where they used to have the go-go shows at?
Magic City.
Yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah,
I
yeah.
used to go
Yep.
down there to see. I saw the Northeast Groovers down there. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
The next day I'd see freaking Madball at Twisters. The day after that, I got dang see Wu Tang I actually saw Method Man and Redman at the Arthur Ashe Center. No,
Oh,
no, no. It was at no, yeah, it was Arthur. No, no, Arthur Ashe. Yeah, it was
no, they
Arthur
used
Ashe
to do
Center.
shows. Yeah, they used to do
Yeah, it
shows
was
about
Arthur Ashe
that.
Center.
Yeah,
You know
yeah,
what I'm saying?
yeah, yeah. Because
I
I know
remember seeing him.
Keith Murray came there too, and he got
Yep.
jumped after the show. I remember that. It was at the
Dang.
Arthur Ashe Center. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was a
You know, I
had
remember
a
seeing that
bad
show, man.
reputation. Yeah,
Yeah, man. I remember seeing that show, and yeah, man, it's man.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Man,
Different times.
this is an amazing build, man. You know what I'm saying? Like I said, we have to have part two. We got to talk about the. It's interesting you brought up the whole disclosure thing. I didn't know you were gonna go that route. So that that's a whole. We can have a whole topic on that. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
yeah. Like I said, I just watched that today. I'd kind of heard some bubblings about it, but I
Yeah,
saw that they just had the press conference on Monday. So I
yeah,
guess
yeah.
that was just yesterday that they
I saw
had it.
clips
Yeah.
on
Yeah, yeah. So
TikTok.
I watched the whole thing. It's a 3 hour thing on YouTube, man. I watched all of it like
Hey,
over the course of the day. I was
like I
doing
said,
other stuff. I wasn't like sitting in front, but I was
yeah,
definitely
yeah,
listening to it. It's got some crazy, crazy stuff in there,
yeah,
man. And
mhm,
it's really gonna be interesting because it's like the full force of the United States government is about to
yeah,
come down
yep,
on like these organizations, man. There's a
hmm
lot of lot at stake in a lot of different ways. So
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that the things ain't what they used to, man. The boogeyman ain't real. You know, the boogeyman virus ain't real. You know what I'm saying? And there's
right.
always ways, to get around the fear tax and the lies that they push on us because the reality is, that nature, Mother Nature, and all that stuff, cosmos, and all that, whatever you want to call it, God is going to prevail. So
Yeah, yeah,
that's just
man.
my perspective. So, but that's it, man. You know what I'm saying? That's it. If you haven't already, again, please go to polka.podcast.com, pick up my book, Bicultural Living and Leaving the World of Illusions. Please
Right.
follow, like, and share as well. And please, we are definitely taking donations to support us at Cash App PDR Corp. You know what I'm saying? We can. People keep on telling me. They keep on motivating me to do more with this. So I'm going to listen to my people and keep on doing more. So I
Uh-huh.
thank y'all for tuning in and thanks for these wonderful guests, that I have. You know what I'm saying? So tune
Yeah,
in. I
man.
think I have guests all the rest of the week as well. But yeah, thank you very much, brother, for come on out and building with
Yeah,
me.
man. Thank you for creating this platform, man. It's important to be able to get stuff out there. So I appreciate you, bro. We'll
Yeah,
connect
man, you
soon.
already know. You already know, brother. All right, that's it for us,
Oh, yeah.
man. We're gonna be out of here, and until next time, the part two. I only know it's what. Knowing this brother, he might crack the internet and have two folds. You know what I'm saying with this next conversation. So
Who
with that,
knows?
that's it for us. We out of here.
All right,
Peace.
man. Peace, family.